All right. Good morning, everyone. So I have the pleasure of coming here from the Mars Discovery District. Anyone here that knows what Mars does? Oh, that's a fair amount of people. That's great. We were started by a bunch of private individuals in 2000 that felt that something needed to be done in the Canadian innovation space in general. Right from the get-go, the social entrepreneurship was part of our mission. It's just as important to make sure that there are social outcomes as there are business outcomes, we feel. And some of the best things that we've done actually are in the social entrepreneurship space. So just very quickly about Mars, we try to organize our work in three different levels. So at the very basic level, we work with talent, meaning that we do a lot of educational activities. I'm involved in delivering workshops to entrepreneurs across Ontario. Probably I do I have several hundred people every year attending workshops that I do. These are very hands-on, experiential workshops. We do a lot of other different types of events. I'll talk about some of them later on. These are free events that are available to everybody who's interested in entrepreneurship. We also work at the business level. So an outcome for us could be that an entrepreneur walks in our door with an idea. Right now, I'm fortunate enough to be involved with a cohort of organizations that are enrolled into our Impact 8 program. These are all social purpose businesses that are undergoing an intensive program this fall. And we're almost at the end. We got 2 sessions left of that program. We have probably about 1,000 different startups or entrepreneurs at various stages of commercialization that we engage with, that we count as our clients. And then finally, we work at the systems level, which is a little bit abstract in many ways. But the fundamental idea behind working at a systems level is that there are obstacles to innovation today. And if we want to be good at innovating, we have to deal with the fundamental problems that we could face either in regulation or otherwise that are obstructing innovation processes. So earlier this fall, for instance, we launched the Social Venture Connection, which is I'm not sure if anyone here's heard about it, but it is, for lack of a better word, it's almost like a stock exchange, where if you have a social purpose business that qualifies for meet the eligibility criteria of the exchange, it's a way to raise money. So right now, I think there's about 12 ventures, and we have a pipeline of others that are listed there, and investors that are interested in making impact investments can put their money into those ventures that they see fit. The Social Venture Exchange, I think, is the first in the world. It took us 6 years of wrangling with a lot of different stakeholders and institutions to figure that one out. So as I mentioned, social entrepreneurship is a key thing for us. The definition that we use for social entrepreneurship is identifying a social problem, using entrepreneurial principles to organize, create, and manage a venture to create social change. And the reason I wanted to start with that is that, I believe that a lot of the settlement organizations consider themselves to be social entrepreneurs. And I wanted to make sure that we understand that even though we deal with a lot of different types of entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurship is definitely within the scope of what Mars is dealing with. So what drives entrepreneurs? So if I could ask just by a show of hands here, a little bit of a question, but who here is driven primarily or motivated by impact of the work that you do? Okay, so good number, I would say probably 2/3, maybe 70%. Who here is driven by money? Okay, so a few people driven by money. So if you ask entrepreneurs in general what motivates them, you're actually not that different. People are interested in three things we find when we and this comes from a very large research project that's rolled out in the US, asking 3,500 entrepreneurs what's motivating them. So whether they're for-profit or not for-profit, impact is what drives the majority of entrepreneurs. They've identified a problem in the world, they want to change it, they see a business opportunity, an opportunity to improve something, and that's what motivates them. Okay, about a third or a little over a quarter are interested in the experience of being an entrepreneur or starting a business, and just 5% are driven by the money themselves. When it comes to the entrepreneurial process, a lot of the businesses that are started right from the get-go when they're new, you may have an idea, you may have a technology, maybe you've spotted a problem and say, okay, maybe I can do something with that. Maybe that could become a business. But a lot of what could make it into a business are essentially assumptions that you have. Yes, you think there may be lots of people that see the world in the same way as you, but you don't actually know. Maybe they don't see the problem in the same way as you. Maybe they don't anticipate that the solution can be the same as you think. Maybe the people that, your expectations of what people will pay for what you do are not shared by a large enough group of people. So almost all startups are mostly based on assumptions. So the entrepreneurial process is a process of investigation, where we're trying to address these assumptions and say, okay, let's conduct experiments or some sort of structured, systematic way of investigating whether or not the world as we think it is actually the world that is seen by other people as well. So it starts out first by validating a problem. You can do that by interviewing if you have access to the people that you need to interview. Or a lot of people today try to automate it through doing web processes, like doing a Google AdWords campaign, for instance, and that drives people through a landing page. So if you can get people to respond to about 8 words that pops up next to a Google search, then there's a validation that there may be some interest. And you can do certain things on the landing page to drive that metric as well. So, but what we're talking about are sort of lightweight, easy to roll out type of experiments. We like to term them affordable loss experiments that drives learning. The purpose is not necessarily to get new customers at this point. The purpose is just to figure out, okay, are there enough people that think this is a problem? Then once you validated a problem, you move on to try and figure out, okay, what's the appropriate solution for this? So in the same way, you try to experiment and figure out, okay, do people prefer solution A to solution B? And you do that in as cheaply and as quickly as possible. So a gentleman called Eric Ries, he wrote a book a few years ago called The Lean Startup that has informed a lot of the thinking in this space. And he suggests this thing called an MVP, which is a minimum viable product. Now, there's a lot of definitions of a minimum viable product. I'm not going to go into that, but essentially what it is, it's a learning vehicle. So he says that, does anybody here know the company Dropbox? Do you use Dropbox to share files and collaborate with others? So the minimum viable product that Dropbox used was a video. They actually didn't develop the solution. They just filmed what it would look like in practice, and they showed it to people and asked, do you think that would solve your problem? And would you want to pay for it? And when they got the feedback they were looking for, they went ahead and developed it. So again, instead of developing something and fully fleshed out, with all its polish and all that, and then launching it, they sought the feedback before they made all that investment. So then once you have a problem and a solution, you have what we call a value proposition. And a value proposition is the first key milestone of any business. Because if you don't have a validated problem and you don't have a solution to it, you can't formulate a value proposition. You don't know what you're offering and you don't know who you're offering it to. So it's hard to articulate the value. But you have to build a business model around it, and we're going to talk a lot about business model in the remainder of the time that I have here. But essentially, the startup process, the purpose of it, is to find and validate a business model. Now, a business model is defined as the value an organization offers its customers and illustrates the capabilities and resources that are required to create, market, and deliver this value and to generate profitable, sustainable revenue streams. Now, that's a lot of words, but we're going to make it a little bit easier because there's a visual tool that we use in most of these cases called a business model canvas that helps us articulate a business model. Now, I should have said something in relationship to the previous slide, and that is that the entrepreneurial process, while I described it as a linear process, it is not. Because when we're doing experiments, most of them actually fail. That's the nature of entrepreneurship, is that we may get some positives to begin with, but most of the time we fail. And so we have to use that failure to go back and revisit, okay, why did it fail? Which one of our assumptions wasn't correct? And how can we change that and then move forward again? So it's an iterative process that is based on failure. So we have to start embracing, as organizations, as entrepreneurs, we have to start embracing the role of failure in helping us to become better at what we do. Okay, so the tool in question, the business model canvas, it looks something like this. I hope this is visible. I know there's some people at the back there that may have difficulties reading this. So this is the business model canvas. It was developed by a gentleman called Alex Osterwalder from Switzerland. He did it as part of his PhD. Now, he took this kind of wordy, slightly complex definition of a business model and said, nobody knows what to do with that. Like, it's incomprehensible, it's complex, there's a lot of moving parts. I don't even know where to begin. And when he started doing his PhD in the mid-2000s, if you had Googled business model, you'd gotten some hit on a Harvard Business Review page that was some dense text, and you would have fallen asleep before you were halfway down the page, and you thought, okay, I could probably sort this out later. So the business model canvas, this is the original. It's developed in a crowdsourced fashion, actually. So when he published his book in 2009, the first 3 pages, I think, had the names of 450 collaborators. So he had engaged with people. He put it out on his blog, businessmodelgeneration.com, all in one word. I encourage you to go and look at it. And he had gotten a lot of feedback in the process. So that's how he came up with this, that the essential building blocks of a business model are these 9 building blocks, and they fit together in a particular pattern. Now, what he wanted to do, his grand mission, was to infuse some of the tenets of design thinking into the business model canvas. So, meaning that's why we have a visual tool today, because that allows us to collaborate. Business models need cross-functional expertise. So when you can bring some people together and work on one visual expression, it makes the whole exercise a lot easier. It improves the communication between the team, and it helps forge a shared vision of what the business is about. So this is the version our homegrown version that we use at Mars. The canvas is made available by Alex Osterwalder under a Creative Commons license, so we can actually change and alter it as we see pleased, and that goes for you too. So I'm just going to walk you through the interview that I take entrepreneurs through in order to populate the canvas. And I start with customer segments. Now, you may not think of all your the people that you serve as customers. So, for the mental exercise I'll ask you to do is exchange the word customer for stakeholder. And then, start listing all the stakeholders that you work with. Settlement organizations deal with complex problems, complex meaning that they're often defined by touching multiple stakeholders and tricky issues. So it helps thinking about it as stakeholders. Each stakeholder has a value proposition associated with it. So what is the problem you solve for that stakeholder? What job does your product do for the customer? And what are the benefits of your product? Those are the key aspects that we want you to formulate and articulate on behalf of each stakeholder. Channels. How do your customers find you? How do they become aware of you and where you are and what you do? How do they buy? Where does the transaction take place? The delivery of services, the logistics of it. Customer relationships. What kind of relationship do you have? Or to put it another way, what kind of relationship do they want to have with you? Revenue streams. How do you get paid? What are the models under which you get paid? Is it a transaction? Is it a subscription? Is it a service revenue? Are you licensing something? Lots of different ways of getting paid. How much is it? Is it a grant? Is it a grant? So this is that's the front end. Those 5 building blocks there make up the front end of the canvas. And then the back end of it starts with the key activities. So what are the things that you need to do to make people aware that you exist and produce and deliver the services that you say you will? So that's the activities, and the second part of that is, okay, what are the resources that you need to have in order to be able to perform those activities? And finally, who are the partners that do some of the work or deliver some of the things that you can't or won't do yourself? And the cost structure, how much does it cost to operate your business model? Fundamentally, what we're looking at is trying to create an image that tilts slightly this way, meaning that the revenues are slightly heavier than the cost, because that's when you have a sustainable business model. So following a design of a business model, what you would do is sit down and look at, okay, if this is how my model operates, what does my monthly budget look like? You know, what's it cost to have me those resources? How many people can I serve? And how much money do I get for doing that? So I'm just going to run quickly through the description of Kiva. Anyone here familiar with Kiva as an organization? Okay, great. So let's look at the canvas and what it looks like for Kiva then, just using the canvas to describe their business model. So who are their stakeholders? So they have funders and users, and they have volunteers. So the thing about Kiva is that they have what we call a multi-sided business model. So they need to attract both funders and entrepreneurs at the same time. Now, the value proposition that they have is one that is articulated here for the funders themselves, and the value proposition they would have for the entrepreneurs, the local entrepreneurs, would be different. How do they get them? Well, Kiva.org is the market platform they have, but they fully depend on the local field partners they have to find and vet the entrepreneurs. They make money through microfinance donations. They get grants, they get corporate sponsors, and foundations. Key activities, they do a lot of marketing. They do financial management. And a part of what they do is that they organize a large cadre of volunteers and interns at both local and an international level to help the business go around. And what are the resources needed? They obviously need their online platform. They need multilingual loan reviewers and web developers, as I said, the volunteers. And then you got the cost structure of that. So they have the web and the e-commerce is the biggest cost structure they have, but they also need to pay for the marketing and communication, the travel that they do, and the staff that they need to have. One thing that I'd like to say before I wrap up, we have every Wednesday night at 6, for those of you who are interested in entrepreneurship, we have a lecture called Entrepreneurship 101. It's webcast live, so at 6, this is 6 o'clock Eastern time. It's webcast live. The webcast is moderated, so anywhere you are, you can ask questions of the people on stage. It's 30 lectures starting every September, running through to the beginning of beginning of May. So it's free, it's a great resource, and with that comes a lot of other resources that we offer you as well. So if you're interested in entrepreneurship, I'd encourage you to check that out. Thanks again.